So without any further ado, let's kick things off. Today, I'm really excited to give you all a sneak peek at our new purchases module. This is something we've been working on for a while here at Excello, and it's been a priority for a lot longer than we've been able to be working on it. So it's really exciting to be able to take you through and show you what we've got in store, and not too far around the corner. And the key message with the purchases module is it's really about how you're able to spend your money from Excello. Excello has had a strong revenue or invoice focus. This is the mirror image of that. This is going to be the way that you're able to use Excello to spend money. All right, so the agenda for today, first of all, we're going to cover a bit of an introduction and background. Then we're going to talk about what's in this upgrade. So there's a few things to cover, things like purchases, which are the not revenue, the opposite of showing you the money, but more a case of showing you your spending and being able to buy things. We're then going to look at the purchases template feature. We're also going to cover the ability to create and send purchase orders, which is going to be great for a lot of folks that have vendors they need to keep in touch with as part of their project or service delivery. You'll be able to use Excello for all of the power you're used to in Excello, things like your email tracking and the backwards and forwards, attachments, etc. You'll be able to use all of those with this purchases module. And we'll also talk a little bit about how we've got our sync coming together for Xero and QuickBooks Online. So you can get these non-revenue, these expenses into the books, if you like, with ease. We'll also go through a release timetable, and we'll then answer all the questions that have come in through the course of the webinar. All right, so in terms of context, Excello has always had, from a product perspective, has always had a bias or a priority set towards revenue. Our focus has been very much on making sure that we're able to get paid and get you guys revenue. And part of our reason for that is that Excello is focused predominantly on service operations, whether it be professional or other forms of service teams. And in those businesses, time is the main cost to the business. So while there's examples of hardware or materials and other expenses that go into delivering a great consulting project or a great architecture project or a great IT project, time is still a big driver, the majority of the cost base. And because time is generally handled through things like payroll, and it's fixed, and it's not necessarily like being able to see where people spend their time is really important, but actually like creating a time purchase is less so. That tends to be handled differently. We haven't focused as much on purchases in the past. And while Excello does have support for materials, I mean, you can call them anything you like. You can call them products, you can call them equipment, you can call them hardware, whatever you like, you can call them, but we think of them as materials, that concept of a non-time revenue and cost entry. And Excello also has expenses, which is those things that get entered, whether it be, taxi fares or hotel or flights or other things that happen in the context of delivering services work. Those things in Excello tend to be, in the business at least, they tend to be less volatile than people's time. You're not having to deal with 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there and 2 hours here. You tend to be dealing with, okay, cool, here's my monthly expense report, here's my details of sort of the hardware that we rolled out with this project. And so being able to handle them while still needing to be done and kind of cumbersome is not the sort of thing that depends quite as much on sort of the high velocity stuff. And you can handle that sort of thing offline or in the background. However, we also appreciated that once we got the invoicing upgrade out of the door last year, we needed to look at the next priority in financials. And it's great to be able to track your materials and expenses in Excello, have them be part of what you bill your customer for, and have them part of that invoicing or revenue story. But it's not good enough just to have them appear in invoices. We realized from talking to users and feedback that we really needed to have the mirror image to invoices. We needed to handle purchases too. So the purchases module has 3 primary objectives. The first one is to easily bundle the costs that are associated with the materials and expenses that get incurred as you're doing work. We want to bundle those together into one or more purchases against a project or a ticket or a retainer, where each purchase has a particular vendor and that you're able to scoop up or pick off those various purchases that you have, those various materials and expenses that represent costs, and put them into a purchase sent to that vendor, where each of those materials or expense types becomes an individual item or line item in a row. We also want to automatically push this purchase across to your accounting system as an expense. So accounting systems often talk in terms of income, cost of goods sold, and expense. And when we use expense inside of Excello, we tend to be more focused on the way that an end user, somebody who's just checked into a hotel or just had to book a flight or just got a receipt for a taxi or a client dinner. And so when we use the word expense, we tend to be thinking of it in terms of an employee filling out an expense report and needing to enter an expense into the product. But in your accounting system, your expenses are basically any of your costs. That includes obviously overheads like rent, electricity, etc., but also includes costs, whether they be cost of goods sold or straight up expenses that need to be captured in your accounting system. So you can see them on your income statement, or some places call it a profit and loss. And so we want to get these purchases into your accounting system. So at any one point in time, you can run a report out of your accounting system, or your CFO or accountant can do that, and know that all of the costs incurred on this project are actually in there, and that you're not artificially reporting wonderful revenue and amazing profitability, and then having the other shoe drop later once you get around to doing a manual entry, which is the way it is now. We also want to optionally make it possible for folks to create a purchase order. So a purchase can exist without being turned into a purchase order, without publishing a PDF. But if you want to, you can take this purchase and then you can turn it into a PDF and send it across to the vendor. And the benefit of this is that then you can have all of the other things in Excello that you're able to use and benefit from, like activities and attachments and automatic email tracking, to track the acceptance and fulfillment of a purchase order. So they're the three things. Let's get the costs that are in your business today related to the work that you're doing in Excello into a purchase. Let's get that purchase in your accounting system so your reporting in your accounting system is accurate. And let's optionally allow you to create a purchase order. All right, so without any further ado, let's get started. But before we kick off onto the brand new stuff, I just want to do a quick little refresher on items, material items in particular. A lot of folks think of this as their product catalog, their list of things that they sell. And this was introduced back in late last year, mid to late last year, with our upgrade to the invoicing module. It allows you to synchronize with your accounting system all of the items that you sell. We actually import them from QuickBooks Online and Xero, so you ideally would keep that list of items up to date in your accounting system, because that's where you're representing also inventory. But we pull those details in. And what we've done with the items functionality with this upgrade, if you can see the screenshot on the right there, we're introducing not just the revenue account codes, but we're also handling the purchase account codes down the bottom there. And while this one says bank fees, just as a screenshot, you generally have things like hardware or cost of goods sold or other dimensions of what you want that cost to appear. The idea being that when you actually create the purchase, you're able to have it appear in your accounting system with those, expense as opposed to income line items populated properly. Now, items are optional when you're creating a quote or a project plan, but they're really highly recommended, mainly because it'll save you time on both your invoicing and your purchasing processes. So when you come into those screens, you'll actually have things pre-filled out for you. And the folks who are needing to enter these purchases and creating purchases and creating invoices, the less they know about the things that accountants are happy with, like ledger codes and account codes, the better. The more they can just pick from a list and hit go and say, right, yeah, there are 10 of these that we purchased that went along with this project, the better. All right, now, before we drill into a specific purchase itself, I want to talk a little bit about purchase templates. So any of you who are familiar with our current upgraded invoicing system will appreciate that the act of creating an invoice inside of Excello is a pretty flexible, powerful thing. And to make that as easy as possible on users that maybe don't have the insight or the management overview, make it as easy as possible, we wanted to allow you to create templates, preset invoice formats with defaults for things like payment terms and titles and notes and other stuff like that. And what we've done with the purchases module is we've taken the same approach. And so we're introducing purchase templates. So because purchases are powerful, we need to make them easy for casual users to use. And that's where the templates come in. So as you might be able to see on the screenshot on the right, we'll actually jump into a demo in a minute. With these templates, you're able to create specific templates for various vendors. So if you buy a bunch of stuff from a hardware vendor, like a distributor, or if you buy a bunch of stuff from, say, Google, like a whole bunch of AdWords on behalf of customers, you need to get those expenses across as a purchase, you'd be able to create a special template for, say, Ingram Micro or Google or Facebook or whoever you're often buying from. And you can pre-fill in things like, payment terms, shipping info, if it's hardware or something physical, any notes you want to make, etc. You're also able to choose how much detail to include in the purchase orders. So just like the template configuration for invoices, you're able to customize the PDF and you're able to choose what you want to show. We also have, the ability for you to choose when you come into a purchase, whether you want to preload all of the unpurchased materials and expenses that you have already entered, or whether you want us to load up empty and then you add them one at a time. All right, so let's actually look at it together. So I'll just make sure I click this right. Yep. All right, so as mentioned at the top, this is all live off staging servers that our production team are shipping to every couple of hours, if not more frequently. They're really pulling hard. So there's going to be bugs here, is what I'm really prefacing. All right, so here's an example of a template. This is a hardware purchase to the San Francisco office with PO. So that's just the template title. The customer doesn't get to see that, or the vendor in this case, but you at least, this is what your users will see when they have a drop-down list of templates to use. And so you've got a few options, like, do you want to create the purchase order by default? Do you want to expand like an advanced settings feature, which is where you're able to have all sorts of custom fields if you want to have them. We've also got the default purchase order title. So I've just got Acme purchase order here, but you can have it be whatever you want it to be. Then you can have the purchase owner, so who it should be, which could be the person who's actually doing the creation, the manager of the object, or a particular user. And if that creator isn't set for some reason, which can happen when we do imports in the background, then it just asks you to choose which staff member you want to fall back to. And while my screen res is a bit small here, you get the drift. You're also able to select who your vendor is. So vendors look up the same database that you have all of your other companies and contacts inside of Excello. And you're able to just do a free text search over here. So if it was more solutions that I wanted, I can do a search for the company name here, more solutions, and then it finds different contacts there. I imagine for a lot of folks, what they'll end up doing is actually having a contact that might be purchases or accounts payable or something like that at their vendor customers. I mean, I can't imagine, even if you happen to know the CEO of Ingram Micro, you're probably not going to send the purchase order to her or him. So that's just where you'll be able to configure that inside of Excello. And then you're able to designate what you want your default notes to be. And then last of all, you're able to have a default item code. So if it turns out your users have gone through in their quoting process, for example, and haven't chosen item codes for some reason, you're able to go and choose what you want your default to be. And that will then just pull in a list of all of the items that you have in your item codes list. There's shipping information, which is optional. So here's just some examples of it. And, for deliveries, please call this number from the call box. There's also details for the purchase order itself. So what vendor notes do you want to have? This is the notes that you put to the vendor, saying, if this can't be delivered by Wednesday, we're not able to use it, for example. And then you've got the email itself, which is where the purchase order gets attached to. So you can customize what you want that copy to be on a per purchase type example. You can also configure your PDF file. So here's an example of where your logo would go. what your phone number and email address, for example, is, and you can customize all of these. I could just change address, for example. I don't care for address. Let's take that out. This is going to say the guys at Google, I'm not, so they're not shipping anything to me. I don't care. So all of this is configurable. You can just modify it however you wish, including with the use of custom fields. And then here's just an example with some totally hard-coded data. So don't worry about what these words are here in the description area. We just needed to have something. But what I do want to show you is how you're able to customize what you have. So you might, for example, say, okay, I want to buy 5 of these, and I want to buy them for a particular rate. So that's your amount that you're prepared to pay for those things that you're purchasing. You may not care about tax codes, and you might not care about, sort of tax amounts, for example. And maybe your purchase orders all come just for, without tax, and they add tax later, depending on what the situation is in your particular jurisdiction. So you're able to customize what you show in the purchase order for folks. You're able to customize what the file name is, and you can obviously customize any of the other fields that are in here inside of the product too. There's a lot of stuff here that's really free text fields for you to just go to town on. So I'll hit save and close there. All right, so let's say I'm happy with that template. Let's swing across and we'll actually have a look back on the deck now. But just to reiterate, these templates are about how you make it easy for users to create purchases that are professional and accurate and don't give away too much information, but without having to train people up incredibly to know all of the bells and whistles that they can use in Excello. All right, now let's look at creating purchases. So purchases themselves, an actual purchase object, is created from the projects module, the tickets module, also known as issues, and the retainers module, also known as contracts. And what you'll see is up in when this goes live, and for those of you who get into the beta program, underneath create, you'll be able to click on purchase, and that will move, that will enable you to open up that purchase. When you create a purchase, you'll be able to do a few things. You'll be able to choose a template, which we talked about just before, and that'll preset most of the fields. You'll be able to choose which expenses and materials to include as items on the purchase. You'll be able to show shipping and delivery information optionally. You'll be able to show payment terms. You'll be able to show whether or not to create a PDF, and you'll also be able to have the option to create materials on the fly. So you can actually come into this purchase screen here without already creating materials on the project, and you'll be able to go through, or for example on the project or the ticket, you'll be able to go through and create a purchase, and we will automatically create those materials for you. All right, let's jump across and look at this for real. So I'm just going to move my browser briefly to get a bit of space. So what I'm going to do is show you, here we are, a create purchase screen. So actually I'll come back into this. I'm going to show you where I came from here. Sorry about that warning on this demo site, just telling me about something. Doesn't matter. All right, so here's an example project that we've got. And in this case, we're doing a technology refresh. So we've got a bunch of services here that we've got, requirements gathering and then installation and then training and go live. So they're the tasks from a services point of view that we'll be rolling out as part of doing the work on this project. Now what I'm able to do is I'll go across to the materials tab here, and I can see that we've got a few different things that we're actually planning to include as materials as part of this work. So for example, I've got these yoga laptops from Lenovo here. So I've got 10 of those with some very guesstimated pricing here. I've got 15 mice and another 5 laptops that are maybe more high-end developer workstations. And so the idea here is roughly we're doing a systems refresh for a company with 15 staff, for example. So that's the context we've got here. All right, so I've got those as my materials. And so what I'm going to do now is, let's say it's time to go and buy those purchases from the vendor. So I come through and hit create purchase. I haven't purchased anything yet. And let's say that I buy my Lenovo computers and my mice from one particular vendor, and I buy the laptops from somebody else from Dell. So what I do is I can choose my template. It'll pull in this particular contact here. And let's say I don't want to buy the Dell laptops from the same vendor, from Andrea. So I can remove that line item here. And what that does is it changes the amount. The ledger and tax codes automatically respond to what the user's preference was. So we're able to automatically handle those details. And then what we can do, I'll actually move the tax in here, get it right. What's a bit different? There we go. And so I'm able to have my various items, my delivery information. I can have some internal notes, for example, or, please by, May 31st. And I can say my terms, I'll pay you on May 31st, for example. And I can choose that I want to create a PDF, at which point I can then do my customization of what that looks like on a per purchase basis. But in this case, I'm just going to go through and save this purchase here. I actually haven't saved a purchase, so I think it's for this demo, we're just going to focus on what's on the screen here. Now, if I wanted to, let's say I came to the screen, I'm like, you know what? There's another type of thing we need. Maybe it's a bunch of keyboards, for example. I can come in here and hit add material, and then this allows me to do a search for that. So in this case, I don't actually have any Logitech keyboards, but let's just imagine that says keyboards. So I'd be able to say, right, I'm going to buy 15 of those keyboards, please. And now I can just add that particular material, even though it wasn't created on the project, I can add that material and just get it straight into the system without having to do any more work, which is pretty awesome. So I can create these at the time. So when I create the purchase, then the items, the materials that I've purchased here, the 10 Lenovo's and the 15, mice and keyboards, those will all get represented on the project screen as materials that have been purchased. They still need to be invoiced. That is a separate, that's the mirror image, if you like, but this is the cost side of the purchasing of those particular materials. And if, for example, I only wanted to, sort of order 5 laptops straight away and 10 mice straight away, and 10, what should be, say, keyboards straight away, I could do that and then hit save purchase. And next time I come into this screen, it would enable me to buy the extra 5 laptops that I had before, where it said 10, I've bought 5, there's still 5 that can still be purchased or still need to be purchased. And so I can put those in. When it comes to editing materials, we'll obviously restrict you from changing material volumes below what you've actually purchased and invoiced. So just a little consideration there. And that's basically how this new screen and the functionality will work. All right, now let's look at the listing of purchases. So once you've created your purchase, you'll be able to see it listed in a new tab, a tab we're calling billing, which is going to be a consolidation of both the purchases as well as the invoices that you've created for that particular project or ticket or other object in Excello. The purchases will have a distinctive red icon showing that they're outgoing, and the green icon for money, inbound for revenue, will be shown to distinguish between the two. You'll also be able to see if there's an outstanding balance on the purchase, and the billing tab will also include filtering and searching. So if you just want to see invoices, you can make that change. If you just want to see purchases, you can see that. All right, in the home stretch, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the accounting system synchronization. So while Excello isn't an accounting system, we're not Xero, we're not QuickBooks, we're not Cashflow, we're not into well, some of the other ones, Intact, Sage, etc. We are definitely a source of a lot of the information that you do need to have and see in your accounting system. And as a result, synchronizing purchases with Xero and QuickBooks Online is absolutely a key requirement of this upgrade, of this new feature. So as we do with invoices, we'll sync your purchases. When you create them, we'll sync them across into Xero and QuickBooks. Now, unfortunately, we won't be able to sync them with QuickBooks Desktop. Frankly, QuickBooks Desktop is becoming increasingly a dinosaur it never played well with the cloud. The integration that we have to use to get invoices to work is a very unnatural thing, very prone to failure and other headaches because it runs on a desktop behind a firewall with technology that was very not user-friendly, to be honest. It wasn't developer-friendly either. So purchases are only going to be available in Xero and QuickBooks Online, the cloud products, and that's if you want to use this and you're on QuickBooks Desktop, this is probably a good time to actually have a closer look at moving into the 21st century and getting onto one of the online products as opposed to the installed ones. And if that means giving your accountants a nudge, that's probably a good idea too, because the sooner they get with the program, the better it'll be for their business as well. Now, we'll automatically push vendors across to Xero or QuickBooks Online as a contact whenever a new purchase is made. And whenever you pay the vendors, so let's say you've bought that, you've put that order in with Ingram Micro or Google's charge your credit card, when you then reconcile that check or that payment or that transfer, wire, ACH, whatever you call it in your jurisdiction, and pull that information into Xero or QuickBooks and say, oh yeah, that was the payment for purchase X, then we will pick that payment detail up and we'll import that back into Excello so that you can see what's still outstanding from a payment perspective. Changes will synchronize in both ways. So you can change your quantity or modify your purchase inside of Excello, and we'll update QuickBooks and Xero and vice versa. The only caveat there is that we are restricted to what the accounting system will let us actually change after the fact. They have their own rules. They're a little bit quirky. For example, if you've got a purchase for $20,000 worth of stuff and you accidentally enter a $10 payment against it, then that purchase is now completely and utterly locked on the accounting side of things. So we can't touch it until you pull out that mistaken payment or partial payment and re-enter it later. And so, Excello will still remain the place where you create and send quotes and create and send your invoices. And then what you'll be able to do with Excello with the new purchases modules, you'll be able to create your purchases inside of Excello. You'll also be able to send your purchase orders. And of course, you'll be able to have continued entry of your expenses, often employee expenses, but can also be contractor expenses or other costs. And then on the accounting side of things, the accounting software is where you're going to have your item lists and your prices and the tax codes and that sort of thing. It's also going to be where you track your inventory. So, knowing if you've got 10 or 20 of these particular things in stock is something that really belongs from a stock keeping perspective in your accounting system as part of your balance sheet and your sort of assets that you have. And then what will happen in most cases where you're tracking inventories, if you have 20 of a certain item on hand and you purchase 10 of them for a particular project, then the accounting system will reflect that and actually reduce the available inventory by 10 because you've just purchased or put some to use, consumed some. The accounting system will still be where you predominantly make and enter payments. And there's also the reimbursement aspect of employee expenses. I've got a little asterisk there because our perfect world, honestly, is that an employee using their mobile app is able to take a picture of a receipt and choose who the vendor is from the database and hit save, and then have to think about it. And then Excello will automatically create a purchase for that particular expense, being a taxi fare or something else, and then synchronize that in real time automatically without you having to use a create purchase screen back across into your accounting system. Unfortunately, the accounting systems have a bit of a quirky way of handling employee expense reimbursement. And so we're still picking through that because they tend to think of them as very different pathways. So trying to reconcile those is something we're still working on getting neat and tidy. Which is a good, I guess, point to now talk about the release timetable. So we're currently doing our internal development and QA work. We'll be continuing on with that for the next, really 3 weeks or so. The demo I've just shown you today is all on live code. No smoke and mirrors there, but it is still being actively developed and tested. Testing for our beta program will probably kick off around mid-June, so about 3 weeks from now. And we'll continue for around about a month. It'll be a limited number of clients that we'll be working with during that period. If you're interested in being part of the beta, please email beta@excello.com. The beta itself will actually be via your production system. So you won't have to have a separate sandbox that you have to, enter test data and mess around with manually. That was the case with the invoicing module. But what we're doing with this upgrade is we're actually building and rolling out this functionality incrementally in the background to production as it passes our QA processes. Now it's all hidden away, but what that means is that once it gets turned on for your account in the beta, you'll actually be able to use this stuff in your mainline work and not have to have more of a burden on actually beta testing this. We'll be testing, looking to test with a variety of clients on both Xero and QuickBooks Online, because there's a lot of work in making sure that synchronization is the way it should be, really tight, really smooth. So yeah, very keen to hear from folks who are using those products that want to be part of the beta. And then lastly, we're targeting a mid-July release. This isn't the sort of thing that should be dropped on folks before the end of quarter. And for a lot of people in our customer base, end of June also happens to be the end of financial year. So another good reason not to be dropping things prematurely. But if you are in the beta, you'll actually be really using the real stuff. So you'll be able to take advantage of it pretty much straight away, just with that asterisk of it being a beta attached.